All right, and welcome back. The past few years have seen a slight attention shift by the film industry in favor of gaming culture. We've seen it most recently with Wreck-It Ralph, and the last week of January we'll see the release of the movie Noobs, starring Jason Mewes of Jay and Silent Bob fame. While these ventures have played it safe, focusing on more mainstream titles like Gears of War and Call of Duty, it's actually in some of the lower budget game developments where the most drama occurs. And we're given a front row seat in Indie Game the Movie.
Part of it is about not trying to be professional.
When you consider the high-powered corporate machines that fuel the development and marketing of banner video game titles like Halo, Call of Duty, and Mass Effect, how refreshing is it to see a handful of guys literally working out of their homes? We'll couple that breath of fresh air with the fact that these guys have invested years of their life into a single project. That success means fame, fortune, and the fulfillment of a lifelong ambition. And that commercial failure would mean financial ruin, industry humiliation, career destruction, and what one described as an end to life as it's known. Just got real.
Tommy even talked about it too, like, as long as he could finish this game, then he'd be okay with dying, because at least he finished the game.
Indie Game follows 4 independent video game developers at various stages of their respective creations. Phil Fish is the man behind Fez, a puzzle platform game which at the time of filming had been about 4 years in the making with still no set release date, or completion date for that matter. Edmund McMillan and Tommy Rafenez are Team Meat, the duo behind Super Meat Boy, a wildly anticipated platformer on the brink of release on Xbox Live. Meanwhile, the sage-like Jonathan Blow is at the other end of the spectrum, resting on the laurels of the mainstream success of his award-winning platform puzzle game, Braid.
Braid's a really interesting game because I was surprised it was as successful as it is.
These 4 make up some fantastically immersive underdog stories put to film. It's quite fascinating to be given a front row seat to every element of the game creation process, from concept art to level design to game mechanics. But what people need to know is that Indie Game is about more than the making of video games. First-time Canadian filmmakers Lisanne Pajot and James Swirsky are essentially giving a behind-the-scenes look at the artistic process. Now, this is something anyone can relate to, even if you've never even held a game controller. The subjects of Indie Game are creating. They put time, thought, love, and vision into something incredibly personal, knowing that it will be presented to an audience, experienced and greatly critiqued. And oh, how they are critiqued. By their supposed fans, by the various professionals brought in to provide a little industry filler here and there, but mostly by themselves.
It's really like a nerve-wracking experience to look at somebody play my unfinished game. It's because it's not done. Like, somebody will get stuck somewhere, or there's a part they don't get or they don't like, and so like, this kind of sucks. Like, yeah, but it's not done. Like, I'll fix it later.
The film is very dramatically shot. At the beginning, you almost want to tell the directors that it's not freaking Days of Our Lives. But as you get into the nail-biting, edge-of-your-seat, and sometimes over-the-top melodrama, you begin to realize that you are meant to feel something. The pressure these guys are under is very real. You are able to feel the stress. You feel their sleep deprivation, you feel their anxiety, and you root for them, no matter how crazy you might think they are. And let's be honest, the guys are borderline.
I have to work until it's done, and if it doesn't get done, I'm so that kind of, no pressure. If you can't get the work done, then the past 2 years are basically worth nothing.
You cheer for them, if only to keep Tommy off a ledge and be able to eat with his family at the Waffle House in peace without having to essentially be given oxygen.
But it's just, the things you sacrifice are, well, the things I've sacrificed have just been social. You kind of have to give up something to have something great.
The roller coaster narrative and trance-like music reinforce this as you're brought through the wave of their roadblocks, achievements, and their reactions to them.
Destructoid, who posted about the trailer, and only for the post from Destructoid, that one post, already got 11,000 likes on Facebook and 209 retweets.
Wait, that's in 2 hours.
In 2 hours.
What's a great thing about watching the movie now, if you haven't already, is that the games that are featured are now complete and playable. It's great to be able to see everything that went into their creation and then turn around and be able to play Super Meat Boy and Fez, which are both exceptionally good games and have both received critical and commercial success. Which we know now.
1,000 copies done.
John swore up and down. That was the Oh, Tommy, if you want to also get even more happy, just go to YouTube and search Super Meat Boy and look at most recent, people are just there's one guy who just posted, it was his unwrapping. He wanted to have like an unwrapping of the game. So he went out and bought points. It shows him getting the points, redeeming the points, putting it into the game, downloading the game, and then it's just him reacting to playing the game.
But as you watch the film, you want to be able to go into it, put your hands on their shoulders and say, don't worry, they're going to do great. Well, except John Blow, who sure as hell doesn't need you to tell him how great he is.
It's like if you're sitting on top of a gold mine, but you don't even really have to dig. It's like you just scoop some dirt aside and there's like a little chunk of gold, and then you scoop some more dirt, and it's, and the most laborious part of the process is actually picking up these heavy chunks of gold and like moving them.
Indie game has safely secured itself a place in geek culture. It's right up there as a gamer movie staple with The King of Kong, Second Skin, and non-documentary features like Wreck-It Ralph, and dare I say it, The Wizard. But what brings it beyond the gates of the gamer subculture is that it gives voice to the life of the tortured artist. It credits video games as a legitimate piece of artistic expression, the same way a painting, a book, or a movie is. And this is where it has more universal appeal to basically anyone who creates.
That there is a kid out there who stayed up all night long for the game to come out and then didn't go to school the next day because he was so into playing it. And that even far exceeds my experiences when I was younger. And to think that I could make something that could have an impact on this kid even creatively, into thinking, hey, I know two guys made this. Like, maybe I can make something too. It's just cool. It's really cool. It feels really, really good.
And we're keeping the indie spirit alive. As promised, here's Mike Sharp with a review of Rock of Ages.
Life is an uphill battle when you're Sisyphus. Alright, besides starting off a review with a terrible pun, if I were told the next game that I was going to be looking at is going to have a story that takes mythology and early modern history, along with the visual stylings of Monty Python, and it would play a little bit like Super Monkey Ball meets a tower defense game, I would have told you to put your drink down. You had had enough. But lo and behold, Rock of Ages takes these quirky characteristics and sprinkles in a healthy dose of pop culture to make for one interesting game. Clearly, this is a very typical, quirky, indie-style game. But do all of these elements actually mesh together to form something that's cohesive? Rock of Ages uses the story, or myth, of Sisyphus. For those of you that have trouble keeping tabs on all those Greek and Roman gods, Sisyphus was a Greek king who outsmarted the god of death and allowed for the world's people to live free from the fear of dying. For a short time, that is, and after the god of death was freed from this trap, you can bet that Zeus was not too pleased. As punishment, he forced Sisyphus to roll a boulder up a steep hill, and just before he reached the top, the boulder would come crashing back down to the bottom, and he was damned to repeat this task until the end of time. In Rock of Ages, however, it looks like Sisyphus was doing his homework, and realized that a huge boulder rolling down a steep hill is a fairly effective weapon to cause some havoc. And so starts Rock of Ages, as you play as Sisyphus who travels through centuries of time to fight some of history's most famous people for his freedom and salvation from his eternal damnation. The game itself has two distinct fashions of play, where there's an action side, which is sort of exactly what you would expect by the title, a very Super Monkey Ball or Marble Madness style game where you control a giant boulder careening down a course, smashing into some objects and trying to avoid others as you gain enough momentum to crash down a door at the end of the track. This is where your rival is hiding, commanding his army to do the same thing. The second phase of the game involves using the points that you had earned from the action phase to build defenses and increase the offensive capability of your boulder, much the same way that you would expect from a tower defense game. One of the best parts about this game is in between those action and defensive sequences when you're treated to a little bit of the story. The story is told to you like a Monty Python piece, using art of the time and animated in an over-the-top and ridiculous way. The story itself is totally ridiculous, as you're Sisyphus traveling through time to fight people like Leonardo da Vinci, Plato and Aristotle, and even the Plague. It's funny, ridiculous, and it adds a lot to the game and makes you overlook some of the things that an independent developer would have problems with, as they don't have the budget of a big AAA studio. Speaking purely on the gameplay side, the more action-style battle sequences are handled reasonably well. Controls in a game like this are very important, and ultimately the rock feels like a giant boulder should. Controls are a little tighter on a gamepad rather than a keyboard and mouse, so playing on an Xbox or having a gamepad for your PC is a big help. One thing that takes away from the controls is the ability for the boulder to jump, and while it is necessary to get around some of the level design, it takes away from the second part of the game, the strategic tower defense elements. The course itself stands out, as there are several very entertaining levels along with a lot of fun art styles and sceneries. What causes some grief in this action stage though is the game incorporates an item system where you need to collect several keys in order to progress through the game. This ultimately serves as an inconvenience and removes you from the point of this whole phase anyway, smashing down that door. The second, more defensive-like segments of the game happen after you've smashed your boulder into the enemy gates, as it takes some time to rebuild and start anew. In this part of the game, you move and position defensive elements such as catapults, cows, and towers along the course to slow down your opponent. This side suffers from the total opposite problem control-wise, in that the keyboard and mouse are much better suited to this task. However, this whole section feels incredibly weak for several reasons. First, the AI rarely does anything that makes much sense, and positions a lot of their towers in very poor spots that are easy to navigate around in the action phase. Second to this is that even if they were placed in better spots, it is very easy to just avoid defenses as a whole, so really limits the whole importance of this part of the gameplay. In my experience, it's just better to get through this part as fast as you can and wait till you can start that action phase again. The game also includes a few multiplayer modes to round out its package. There's a split-screen challenge mode which allows you to replay some of the same conflicts from the story mode, and there's also a few more fun modes as well, a time attack and a much more enjoyable skee-ball mode. In skee-ball mode, you're told to go down the track and hit as many objects as you can, and which at the end of the track you're finally presented a huge skee-ball style board where you aim your rock and try and drop it in one of the corresponding multiplier buckets. At the end though, these modes don't really serve too much to increase the replayability of the game. In my mind though, what this game is really screaming out for is a mobile port. The control issues would be much more enjoyable than what occurs on a PC or an Xbox, and the short versus style combat and zany storytelling would translate perfectly to a more mobile style of play. As it stands now, it would be unfair to call Rock of Ages a bad game, or even an average game, as there's lots of fun to be had here. The biggest thing that's holding it back though is its short length and low replayability. I would highly recommend this game to fans of Marble Madness style games, or anyone who's a little dorky like me and enjoys some goofy storytelling and wacky art styling, especially when they manage to hide some history lessons in it as well. For anyone else, this is probably a title that you could easily miss, or at least wait till it's on sale if you're thinking of picking up.
Stay tuned for an update on the Bell Aliant Fiber Op Gaming League. The first tournament was a great success, and we have the results for StarCraft 2 and League of Legends coming up, so don't go anywhere.